The alarm clock's red digits glowed 6:15 a.m. when Marcus Dalton Webb silenced it with a practiced hand. 2 years since Sarah died, 731 days of being both parents. The number had meaning only because Emma counted them on her calendar, marking each morning with a small heart in purple marker, her mother's favorite color. Marcus swung his legs out of bed feet, finding the cool hardwood floor of the South Chicago apartment. 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a kitchen barely wide enough for 2 people to stand side by side. The rent ate a third of his paycheck from Sterling Grand Hotel. But the lease allowed month-to-month flexibility, and the building sat 3 blocks from Emma's school. Location mattered more than comfort when your 9-year-old daughter couldn't hear danger coming. He patted down the narrow hallway, pushed open Emma's door. Morning light filtered through cheap blinds, casting stripes across posters of sign language alphabets, and a framed photo of Sarah holding infant Emma. His daughter slept curled on her side, one hand tucked under her pillow, dark hair spilling across white cotton. Marcus counted 5 breaths, chest rising, falling, proof of life, before he touched her shoulder. Emma's eyes opened. No startle reflex, no gasp. She'd learned young that the world didn't announce itself with sound. Her hands moved before she was fully awake. "Good morning, Dad," Marcus signed back. "Good morning, Bug. School today. Up." Emma groaned, a sound she couldn't hear herself make, but had learned produced the desired effect on hearing people. She rolled onto her back, stretched like a cat, then sat up. Her fingers moved with the quick precision of native fluency. "Can I take the bus alone today?" The question landed like a fist to Marcus's solar plexus. He'd expected it eventually. Emma had been watching other kids her age navigate the city with increasing independence, but not this morning. Not when he was already running late for his shift, not yet. His signs came slower than hers, still carrying the deliberate quality of someone who'd learned the language in adulthood. "When you're older." Emma's face set in that stubborn expression she'd inherited from her mother. "I'm 9, not 5. Other kids my age go places alone. When you're 18, you can go wherever you want. Right now, I drive you." The argument was old enough to have its own rhythm. Emma knew pushing further would accomplish nothing. She swung her legs out of bed, grabbed clothes from the dresser, disappeared into the bathroom. The door closed with enough force to rattle the frame, a small rebellion that required no translation. Marcus stood in the hallway, hands clenched at his sides. Sarah's voice echoed from memory words spoken in the hospital 3 days before the end. "Promise me you'll let Emma have a normal life. Don't let your fear cage her," he'd promised. Lying had seemed kinder than admitting the truth that he checked Emma's breathing every night because the universe had already stolen Sarah and might come back for his daughter. That normal felt like a luxury reserved for people who hadn't watched someone they loved disappear one cell at a time. Breakfast was quick, mechanical. Scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. Emma ate while reading a book about marine biology, her eyes tracking illustrations of creatures that lived in permanent darkness. Marcus cleaned the kitchen, packed her lunch, tried not to notice how much she looked like Sarah when she concentrated, the same slight furrow between her brows, the same way her tongue pressed against her top teeth. The drive to Midwest Academy for the Deaf took 11 minutes in morning traffic. Emma stared out the window, sullen from their earlier exchange. Marcus pulled up to the drop-off zone, watched other parents executing the same ritual. Some signed goodbye, most didn't. The hearing world hadn't learned to speak Emma's language, which meant she lived in perpetual translation, always accommodating, never accommodated. Emma grabbed her backpack, paused with her hand on the door handle. Her fingers moved. "Love you." Marcus's throat tightened. "Love you too. Have a good day." She climbed out, joined the stream of students flowing toward the building's entrance. Marcus waited until she disappeared inside another ritual, another check against disaster. Then he pulled back into traffic, headed downtown. Sterling Grand Hotel rose 23 stories above Chicago's financial district, its limestone facade gleaming in October sunlight. Marcus had worked here 10 months, first as overnight maintenance, then day shift when Frank Morrison recommended him for the promotion. The pay was better, $14 an hour instead of $12, and the schedule ended at 4, which meant he could pick up Emma by 4:30. He parked in the employee lot, changed into his work uniform in the locker room. Dark blue pants, matching shirt with maintenance embroidered across the back, steel-toed boots that had seen better days. The transformation from father to janitor took 3 minutes. Becoming invisible required only walking through the service entrance. The hotel's back corridors smelled of industrial cleaner and the ghost of 1,000 room service breakfasts. Marcus pushed his cart toward the supply closet, mentally cataloging the day's tasks. Lobby floors needed mopping by 8. Third-floor conference rooms required setup for a noon meeting. The VIP wing demanded extra attention because wealthy guests noticed dust that ordinary people missed. Frank Morrison stood near the supply closet, reviewing the day's maintenance schedule on a clipboard. 55 years old, built like someone who'd spent a career lifting heavy things, gray hair, cropped military short. He'd served 2 tours as a Marine, came home to work honest labor, raised 3 kids on a maintenance worker's salary. The left side of his face carried scars from an IED in Kandahar, thin white lines that mapped trauma he never discussed. "Morning, Webb. You're early." Marcus grabbed his mop bucket, started filling it from the industrial sink. Couldn't sleep. Frank studied him with the directness of someone who'd learned to read men's faces in combat. Emma still asking to ride the bus solo, Marcus's hands stilled on the mop handle. "How did you know?" Frank's expression softened. "My daughter pulled the same thing at 9. Wanted to walk to school by herself. I said no for 2 years. Marcus resumed filling the bucket, watching water cascade over institutional gray plastic. "What changed your mind?" Frank set down the clipboard, leaned against the concrete wall. "Lost my son in Kandahar. 2009. He was 22. After that, I held my daughter so tight she couldn't breathe. Wouldn't let her drive until she was 18. Didn't want her dating until 20. My wife finally said, 'You're not protecting her, you're suffocating her.' Hardest truth I ever heard." The sink continued running. Marcus didn't move to turn it off. "How did you learn to let go?" "Didn't. Still working on it. But I show up, do my job, try to be someone my kids can be proud of when they think about me. That's all we got, Webb, showing up and doing right when it counts." The water reached the bucket's rim. Marcus shut off the faucet, lifted the heavy load. Frank's words settled somewhere beneath his ribs, uncomfortable but true. "Coffee?" Frank nodded. "Break room, 5 minutes." The hotel's employee break room occupied a windowless space on the basement level, furnished with mismatched chairs and a coffee maker that produced something approximating caffeine. Marcus poured 2 cups, black for both of them, and sat across from Frank at a scarred plastic table. Frank wrapped his hands around the mug, steam rising between them. "You got training most janitors don't have. Brennan mentioned you spotted a shoplifter last month before security cameras did." Marcus shrugged. "Old habits. 12 years in corporate security teaches you to read body language." Frank's gaze sharpened. "Brennan also said you assessed the exit routes during that kitchen fire drill, identified 3 bottlenecks before she did." "Why'd you leave security work?" "Sarah got sick. Needed to be home more. Security required travel, long hours, staying sharp for threats. After she died, I couldn't—" He stopped the sentence unfinished because some things couldn't be explained to people who hadn't lived them. Emma needed stability. This job provides that. Frank drank his coffee, let silence do the work of acknowledgement. Good kid, your daughter. Saw her at the school fundraiser last spring. She auctioned off those drawings, ocean creatures, right? Made $200 for the art program. Marcus felt the ghost of a smile. She wants to be a marine biologist, studies those deep-sea fish that live without light. Makes sense. Girl who lives in silence understands creatures that live in darkness. The observation hit harder than Frank probably intended. Marcus finished his coffee, stood. Better get to the lobby. Morning rush starts soon. Frank remained seated. Webb, you're doing right by that girl. Don't let fear make you forget that. Marcus nodded, carried his empty cup to the sink, headed toward the service elevator. Frank's words followed him like smoke, impossible to outrun, equally impossible to grasp. The Sterling Grand's lobby sprawled across 5,000 square feet of Italian marble and crystal chandeliers. Victoria Catherine Sterling had designed the space herself during the hotel's renovation 8 years ago, combining old money aesthetics with modern functionality. Guests checked in beneath a 40-foot ceiling, their footsteps echoing across floors polished to mirror brightness. Marcus started mopping at the lobby's east end, working in methodical strips that wouldn't leave streaks. The 8 o'clock crowd flowed around him, business travelers in expensive suits, tourists with cameras, delivery people hauling packages. They moved through his workspace without acknowledgement, their eyes sliding past him as if he were architectural rather than human. Invisible people see everything because no one remembers to hide from them. Victoria Sterling crossed the lobby at 8:15 heels, clicking a steady rhythm against marble. 48 years old, 5'7", dark hair pulled back in a style that probably had a name Marcus didn't know. Her suit looked like it cost more than his monthly rent. She carried a leather portfolio phone pressed to her ear, expression suggesting the conversation wasn't going well. She passed within 3 feet of Marcus, close enough that he caught her perfume, something floral and expensive. Her eyes never dropped to acknowledge his presence. Why would they? He was maintenance. Part of the building's function, no different than the heating system or emergency lighting. Marcus kept mopping, watched her reflection in the polished floor. 12 years of security training meant he noticed details other people missed. She walked slightly faster than usual this morning. Her free hand kept adjusting the portfolio's strap. Someone had upset her, or maybe she was running late. Sarah Elizabeth Whitmore stood behind the concierge desk, her blonde hair pinned in an elaborate updo that had probably required significant effort. 40 years old, 15 years with Sterling Grand. She possessed the supernatural ability to diffuse angry guests and charm difficult vendors. She looked up as Victoria approached, offered her professional smile. "Miss Sterling, morning messages are on your desk. Mr. Hollis needs to discuss Q4 projections before the board meeting." Victoria's expression didn't change. "Tell Gregory I'll review the numbers at 1. Anything urgent, Senator Brennan's office called. They're moving tomorrow's meeting to 4 p.m. Fine. Adjust my schedule accordingly." Sarah made a note on her tablet. Also, the foundation director called. "Dr. Winters wants to discuss the scholarship program." Victoria's shoulders relaxed fractionally at the mention. "Tell Maggie I'll call her this afternoon." She continued toward the executive elevators, disappeared into a car marked for staff use only. The doors closed. Sarah returned to her computer. Marcus resumed mopping. The hotel's rhythm continued uninterrupted. Marcus had worked at Sterling Grand long enough to learn its patterns. Morning rush peaked between 8 and 9. Checkout rush hit at 11. The VIP wing required special attention because wealthy guests paid premium rates for perfection. The service corridors provided the most efficient routes between floors. Victoria Sterling walked through the lobby every morning at 8:15, coffee in hand. Phone to her ear, eyes fixed somewhere beyond the present moment. He'd never spoken to her. Couldn't remember her ever speaking to him. The gulf between CEO and janitor might as well have been measured in light years. Marcus finished the lobby by 9:30, moved to the third-floor conference rooms. Setup for a noon meeting required arranging 50 chairs, testing the projector, ensuring water pitchers were filled and glasses spotless. Mindless work that left too much room for thinking. Emma sitting in class, surrounded by teachers who understood her language. Sarah's hospital bed in those final days. Her hand growing lighter in his grip as if she were already leaving. The promise he'd made to let Emma live normally, a lie so obvious he wondered if Sarah had believed it. The morning passed. Lunch came from a deli across the street, turkey sandwich, chips, bottled water consumed in the break room while Frank discussed baseball scores. Marcus returned to work at 1, tackled the second-floor hallways, noticed a loose carpet tile near room 247. He called it in to maintenance coordination, received confirmation that someone would fix it tomorrow. 2 o'clock arrived. Marcus headed toward the VIP wing, pushing his cart loaded with supplies. The 6th floor required careful attention. This was where Sterling housed their most important guests, where luxury meant noticing the absence of anything that might suggest imperfection. He was mopping near the elevator bank when Victoria Sterling and an unfamiliar man emerged from the parking garage elevator. 2:15 p.m. She was early. Victoria typically returned from lunch meetings between 2:30 and 3. Marcus kept his head down, mop moving in steady arcs. 12 years of security training, whispered warnings. His conscious mind took another 3 seconds to process. Victoria's posture was wrong. She held herself too rigid, shoulders drawn up, stride slightly off rhythm. The man walked half a step behind her hand, resting at the small of her back in a gesture that might look courteous to casual observation. But his fingers pressed too firmly against her jacket. His other hand stayed inside his coat pocket at an unnatural angle. Marcus's mop slowed. He angled his body to catch their reflection in the polished marble. The man was 40-something, dark hair, expensive suit, clean-shaven. His eyes moved, constantly checking angles, cataloging exits behavior. Marcus recognized because he'd done the same thing for 12 years. The man said something too quiet to hear. Victoria's spine straightened. Her left hand dropped to her side, fingers moving in quick, precise shapes. "Help me. Gun. Forced contract. Don't look up." The mop stopped mid-stroke. Water pooled at Marcus's feet. His heart hammered against his ribs, hard enough to make his vision pulse. The CEO of Sterling Grand Hotel had just signed to him in American Sign Language, had just told him she was being held at gunpoint, had just trusted that he would understand and act, and not get everyone killed. Marcus forced the mop to resume its rhythm, forced his breathing to stay steady, forced his eyes to stay down even though every instinct screamed to assess the threat directly. Looking up meant the gunman would know Marcus understood, meant Victoria's silent cry for help became a death sentence. They passed within 10 feet. Marcus watched their reflections grow smaller, watched them turn toward the VIP elevators. The man pressed the call button with his free hand. His other hand never left his coat pocket. Marcus's training catalog details automatically. Subject male, white, 40-45, approximately 6 feet tall, 180 pounds, no visible scars or distinguishing marks. Suit expensive, tailored, dark gray. Shoes leather, well maintained. Behavior controlled, methodical scanning environment, but not aggressively. Threat assessment, professional. This was not the man's first hostage situation. The elevator arrived. They stepped inside. Doors closed. Gone. Marcus set down the mop. His hands shook. 2 years since he'd needed to make a tactical decision under pressure. 2 years since Sarah's death had stripped him of the hardness required for security work. But the training didn't disappear. It just waited dormant for the moment when instinct overrode grief. Emma was at school, safe. Pickup at 4:30, 2 hours and 15 minutes. If Marcus intervened and died, Emma became an orphan. If Marcus did nothing, Victoria Sterling died in her own hotel. Sarah's voice from the hospital bed 3 days before the end promised me 2 things. Keep Emma safe, come home every night. He'd promised, meant it, would die before breaking that promise. Sarah's other words, softer spoken when she thought he was asleep. Don't let our daughter grow up thinking the world is cruel because no one helped when it mattered. Be the man who helps. Marcus grabbed the yellow caution sign from his cart, walked toward the VIP elevators. Placed the sign directly in the path anyone using those elevators would need to cross. Wet floor, slippery surface. A small delay, maybe 30 seconds, but enough time to reach the supply closet phone without being seen. He turned left, moved quickly but not running. Running drew attention. He was maintenance. Maintenance moved with purpose, not panic. The supply closet occupied a corner of the VIP hallway, unmarked door that most guests never noticed. Marcus slipped inside, closed it behind him, grabbed the wall-mounted phone. Extension 347 security office. The line rang once. Security. This is Ashford. Brennan Cole Ashford ran Sterling Grand's security with the efficiency of someone who'd spent a decade as a Chicago PD detective before private sector pay. Convinced her to switch careers. 35 years old, blonde hair usually pulled back in a practical ponytail. Sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. Marcus had spoken to her exactly twice, once during his initial hiring background check, once when he'd spotted a shoplifter in the gift shop. This is Marcus Webb, day maintenance. I need you to watch the VIP route right now. The CEO is in danger. Man with her has a weapon. Do not approach directly. Silent response only. Silence on the line. 2 seconds. 3. Then Brennan's voice came back, all business. Describe the man. Black suit, 40 to 45, white male, approximately 6 feet 180. Hand inside his coat pocket at unnatural angle. Subject has professional bearing, controlled movement, scanning environment, positioning himself away from camera angles. How do you know about the weapon? She signed to me. American Sign Language. Said he has a gun, forcing her to sign a contract. Another pause. You read sign language. My daughter's deaf. CEO signed, help me, gun, forced contract, don't look up. The sound of rapid typing came through the phone. I'm pulling up cameras now, looking at lobby footage from 220. I see them entering. You're right, he's positioned himself strategically. Brennan's voice shifted, taking on an edge. You said your day maintenance. Your background check flagged corporate security experience. 12 years, risk assessment. Left the field 2 years ago. Why? Marcus gripped the phone harder. My wife died. Needed to be home for my daughter. More typing. Can you give me a threat assessment? Subject is not amateur. This is controlled extraction. Direct confrontation means bloodbath. We need silent coordination, controlled delays, box him in gradually. What's your recommendation? I can create legitimate maintenance delays, buy time. You coordinate emergency response. Brennan's response came quick. Do it. Create your delays, but stay safe. I'm calling Chicago PD now. SWAT on silent approach. Marcus, one more thing. Those cameras show him entering at 1:45 p.m. He came through the parking garage with company credentials. Electronic badge access. Marcus's stomach dropped. Inside help. Yeah, stay on your toes. If there's someone working with him, they might be monitoring security response. The line went dead. Marcus set down the phone, stepped back into the hallway. His heart still hammered. His hands still shook. But the old training settled over him like a familiar coat, uncomfortable but worn enough to feel natural. He was halfway back to his cart when Frank Morrison appeared around the corner, moving with the deceptive speed of someone who'd spent years carrying heavy equipment. The older man's scarred face showed no expression, but his eyes tracked Marcus with the attention to detail that marked former military. Frank didn't speak until they were close enough for quiet conversation. "Saw you moving different. Something wrong?" Marcus made a split-second calculation. Frank was prior service. Frank understood chain of command and operational security. Frank had a daughter. He'd understand. CEOs being held hostage. Man with a gun. I'm coordinating with Ashford. Frank's expression didn't change. His voice stayed level. "What do you need from me? Cover my routes." "Emma's pickup at 4:30. If something happens," Frank cut him off. "Nothing's gonna happen. You got training. You got instincts. And you got backup. I'll watch your six." The Marine terminology shouldn't have been comforting. Was anyway. Frank continued, "Your girl's safe. I'll pick her up myself if needed. School knows me from the fundraiser. You do what you gotta do." Marcus felt something loosen in his chest. Emma would be okay. Whatever happened in the next 2 hours, Frank Morrison would make sure Emma had someone to pick her up at 4:30. "Go." Frank jerked his head toward the VIP elevators. "Do your job. I'll handle the rest." Marcus grabbed his cart, headed back toward his position. Frank disappeared down the service corridor without another word. Brotherhood didn't require extended conversation. Just action. Just showing up. The VIP elevator bank sat empty. Marcus's caution sign remained in place. He positioned his cart at an angle that created a natural bottleneck. Anyone exiting the elevators would need to navigate around it, adding precious seconds of delay. Then he knelt by the electrical outlet near the elevator doors, pulled a screwdriver from his tool belt, removed the outlet cover. To anyone watching security cameras, he was maintenance checking potential electrical issues. To Brennan Ashford, watching from 3 floors below, he was marking his position and indicating readiness. His radio crackled, a small walkie-talkie clipped to his belt that maintenance used for coordination. Brennan's voice came through barely above a whisper. "Webb, this is Ashford. Can you hear me?" Marcus pressed the transmit button twice. 2 clicks. "Roger. Police are staging 3 blocks south. SWAT commander wants entry points and timing. I'm sending someone to the main lobby to create a distraction buffer. Keep normal activity visible so our subject thinks everything's routine. When I give you the signal, I need an audio distraction. Something that makes noise but doesn't look like an attack. Can you do that?" Marcus pressed the button twice. "Affirmative." "Good. Stand by." The radio went silent. Marcus continued working on the electrical outlet, moving with deliberate slowness. Time was the weapon. Every minute delayed was another minute for SWAT to position, for Brennan to coordinate, for someone to find a solution that didn't end with bodies on expensive carpet. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Text from Emma's school reminder: pickup today at 4:30 p.m. Reply yes to confirm. Marcus typed one-handed yes. Another buzz. This one from Frank: kids covered. Focus on your job. Simple. Direct. Everything that mattered said in 6 words. The elevator dinged. Marcus's hands stilled on the screwdriver. Footsteps emerged, 2 people moving together. Victoria's heels clicked against marble. The man's leather shoes made softer sounds. Marcus kept his head down, body angled so he appeared focused on the outlet. But his peripheral vision tracked their movement. They'd stopped at his caution sign. The man was frowning at the maintenance warning. Victoria's voice steady and professional. "Sometimes the system glitches. We can take the service stairs if needed." The man's hand tightened on her arm, visible for just a moment before he adjusted his grip. "We'll use the stairs." They turned toward the service stairwell. Marcus waited until they were 10 feet away, then stood, grabbed his cart, began pushing it in the opposite direction. He couldn't follow directly, too obvious. But the south service stairwell connected to a basement-level maintenance corridor that would let him get ahead of them. His radio crackled. "Brennan's subject is moving towards south service stairwell." "Where are you?" Marcus pressed the button once, twice, then held it down. "Morse code dit-dit-da-da. Heading to north stairwell to intercept. Copy. Do not engage. I repeat, do not engage." Marcus reached the north stairwell, yanked open the heavy door, started descending. His boots thundered against concrete. 3 steps at a time, hand on the rail for balance. The old security training overriding middle-aged knees that protested the sudden sprint. 4th floor, 3rd, 2nd. His radio crackled again. "Subject just entered south stairwell at 6th floor. They're heading down. Hold at 1st floor landing. SWAT is entering building now through main entrance. We need to box him in without spooking him." Marcus reached the 1st floor landing, positioned himself behind the door. Through the small window he could see an empty hallway service corridor that led to the loading dock. If the gunman came through that door, Marcus was too close to avoid being seen. But from this angle he could assess the threat, communicate position to Brennan. Provide intelligence that might prevent someone from dying. Footsteps echoed in the south stairwell, heavy, descending rapidly. The man was moving fast. Something had spooked him. Marcus's radio subject is at 2nd floor and accelerating. He knows something's wrong. All units be advised, subject is aware of response and becoming unpredictable. The footsteps stopped. A door banged open. Victoria's voice strained. "The stairs are fine. Why are we shut up?" Gunman's voice, first time Marcus had heard it clearly. "We're leaving. Now. Anyone tries to stop us, you die first." The footsteps resumed faster now. Marcus pressed his radio subject, panicking. "Weapon no longer concealed. Repeat, threat is escalated." Brennan's response crackled. "SWAT is 60 seconds out. Can you slow him without engagement? Negative. He's too close. Then get clear. Get out of there." Marcus looked at the door. 30 feet beyond it, Victoria Sterling was being dragged toward a loading dock by a man with nothing left to lose. 60 seconds felt like 6 decades. 60 seconds meant anything could happen. The door at the south stairwell burst open. The gunman emerged, first weapon now visible in his hand. A black semi-automatic pressed against Victoria's temple. His eyes were wide, scanning. He saw Marcus immediately. "You!" The gun swiveled toward Marcus, away from Victoria for just a fraction of a second. "Janitor, stand up slowly, hands where I can see them." Marcus stood, raised his hands, let the screwdriver clatter to the floor. His training screamed calculations. Subject is right-handed. Weapon is a Glock 19 15-round magazine. Subject's finger is on the trigger. Muscle memory suggests military or law enforcement training. Distance between them approximately 20 feet. Too far to rush without getting shot. Victoria is between subject and exit route. Subject is choosing between 3 targets. Marcus, Victoria, the loading dock door. "Walk away, now. Do not look back." Marcus met Victoria's eyes. She stood frozen, the gun's barrel leaving a small circular impression against her temple. Her left hand moved behind her back, fingers forming quick shapes he almost missed. "Police coming. Stall." Marcus nodded, fractionally began walking backward, hands still raised. His boots scraped concrete. The gunman watched him for 3 seconds, then shoved Victoria toward the loading dock door. "Move. We're leaving together. When I'm clear, I release you, not before." They reached the door. The gunman's hand closed on the handle. Marcus's radio crackled loud enough for everyone to hear. Brennan's voice. "All units, subject is at loading dock. Repeat, armed suspect with hostage at loading dock. Close perimeter but hold position." The gunman's face went white. His head snapped toward the radio at Marcus's belt. His eyes widened with understanding and rage. You called them." You... The fire alarm erupted. Strobing lights flashed red. A klaxon loud enough to make eardrums ache filled the corridor. Ethan Callahan had triggered it remotely distraction chaos. Anything to break the gunman's focus, Victoria dropped. Not fell dropped, deliberately going limp and heavy. The gunman's grip failed. She hit the concrete floor hard enough to bruise. Marcus moved, not toward the gunman, toward Victoria, covering her body with his, creating a barrier between her and the weapon. The gunman raised his gun. Time moved through Honey, each second stretching. Marcus heard the hammer click back, saw the barrel line up with his chest. Understood with perfect clarity that he was about to die in a basement corridor. Sarah's face, Emma's smile, the promise to come home every night about to be broken for reasons that seemed right even though they guaranteed his daughter's orphaning. The lights cut out, complete darkness. Emergency lighting took 3 seconds to activate, 3 seconds where trained operators with night vision goggles owned the space. Green laser sights appeared like stars in the black. Multiple points of light all trained on the gunman. Drop the weapon. SWAT commander's voice amplified by adrenaline and training. Drop it now. The gunman swung toward the voice. Muzzle flash lit the corridor like lightning. The shot hit concrete, ricocheted, sent sparks flying. Return fire came instantly, not bullets, but a beanbag round that hit the gunman's shoulder with enough force to spin him sideways. His weapon clattered to the floor. SWAT officers emerged from darkness, tackled him face first into concrete, wrenched his arms behind his back. Zip tie restraints appeared. Miranda rights began before the emergency lights finished their boot sequence. Marcus stayed over Victoria, feeling her breathing beneath him, feeling the slam of his own heartbeat trying to break through his ribs. Brennan Ashford appeared beside them, offered her hand. You can stand up now, Webb. It's over. Marcus pushed to his feet, legs shaking. Victoria sat up slowly, one hand pressed to her temple where the gun had left its mark. Her eyes found his. You saved my life. Marcus couldn't speak. His throat had closed. His hands were trembling too hard to sign even if she'd asked a question. Frank Morrison appeared from somewhere, gripped Marcus's shoulder. The touch grounding wordless acknowledgement of something too big for language. Detective Caroline Jane Pritchard arrived 6 minutes later. 45 years old, with dark hair pulled into a practical bun and eyes that had seen enough violence to recognize its aftermath. She took statements methodically, starting with Victoria, then Marcus, recording everything on a digital device that would become evidence. The loading dock filled with personnel. Chicago PD secured the scene. Paramedics checked Victoria for injury, minor bruising, elevated heart rate, otherwise unharmed. The gunman was loaded into a squad car, still screaming about lawyers and constitutional rights, voice growing distant as the vehicle pulled away. Marcus stood against the wall, watching it all with the detachment of someone whose adrenaline had burned out and left him hollow. His shift ended at 4. Emma's pickup was at 4:30. He needed to move, needed to function, but his legs wouldn't support the weight of everything that had just happened. His phone buzzed. Text from Frank heading to pick up Emma now. We'll bring her to hotel. You're in no condition to drive, Marcus typed back. Thanks. One word, inadequate, but Frank would understand. Brennan found him 20 minutes later after most of the emergency personnel had cleared. Her face carried new lines of stress age accelerated by crisis. You did good work today, Webb. That training you claimed was rusty saved lives. Marcus shook his head. Just delayed. You did the real work. Brennan pulled out her phone, showed him frozen camera footage. The man you delayed, his name is Derek Michael Vaughn. He works for organized crime. Been setting this up for 18 months. If he'd gotten Victoria to sign those contracts before we could intervene, She would have lost controlling interest in Sterling Hotels by Monday morning. What about inside help? Already got him. Gregory Hollis, Senior VP of Operations. Been with the company 12 years. His badge was cloned to get Vaughn inside. Found $800,000 in gambling debts that were paid off 6 months ago. Vaughn's organization owned him. Marcus processed that, 12 years. Victoria had worked with someone for 12 years who sold her out for debt relief. Brennan continued, Detective Pritchard wants your full statement tomorrow. For now, you should go home. Get some rest. My daughter Frank's bringing her. They'll be here in about 5 minutes. Marcus nodded. His hands were still shaking. That would probably continue for a while. Emma arrived at 4:47 p.m. holding Frank's hand, with the trust of a child who'd learned that some adults could be counted on. She saw Marcus and broke into a run, throwing herself into his arms with the force of 9 years of pure relief. Her fingers moved rapidly against his back where Frank couldn't see, scared. Thought something bad happened. Marcus signed back. I'm okay. Everything's okay. Promise. Emma pulled back, studied his face with those dark eyes that missed nothing. She signed, You're lying. You look like the photos of you from when Mom died. The observation landed like a knife between ribs. Marcus knelt so they were eye level. Something bad almost happened, but it didn't. I'm here. I'm safe. We're going home. Emma's lower lip trembled. She threw her arms around his neck, buried her face against his shoulder. Marcus held her, felt her breathing, counted each one until the tightness in his chest loosened enough to permit speech. Frank stood a respectful distance away, giving them space but remaining present. When Emma finally pulled back, he stepped forward, signed with the careful deliberation of someone who'd learned the basics but never claimed fluency. Proud of you, kid. Your dad's a hero today. Emma turned to Marcus, fingers moving. What did you do? Marcus met Frank's eyes over his daughter's head. The older man gave a tiny shake of his head. Not this conversation, not here, not yet. Marcus signed back. Tell you at home. Right now we need to go. Victoria Sterling appeared before they could leave, still wearing the suit from this morning, though it looked rumpled now, exhausted. She approached slowly, as if worried sudden movement might spook them. Mr. Webb, I need to thank you properly and apologize. Marcus stood, kept one hand on Emma's shoulder. You don't need to apologize. I do. I've walked past you every morning for 10 months, never acknowledged your presence, never learned your name until today. That's unacceptable. You had no reason to notice maintenance staff. Victoria's expression sharpened. That's exactly the problem. You worked here 10 months. You saw danger I missed. You understood what was happening when no one else did, and I didn't know you existed. Emma tugged Marcus's sleeve, signed. Who is she? Victoria saw the gesture, understood immediately. She knelt, positioned herself at Emma's eye level, and signed with careful precision. I'm Victoria. Your dad saved my life today. Emma's eyes went wide. She signed back. How? Victoria glanced up at Marcus, seeking permission. He nodded. Victoria continued signing. A bad man tried to hurt me. Your dad was brave. He called for help. He kept me safe. Emma processed this, then signed, Dad's always brave. Victoria smiled, the first genuine expression Marcus had seen from her. You're right. He is. She stood, returned her attention to Marcus. I need to speak with you tomorrow. There are things I'd like to discuss, changes I want to make, but not tonight. Tonight you should be with your daughter. Marcus nodded. Tomorrow's fine. Victoria reached into her jacket, pulled out a business card. My direct line. Call anytime. Marcus took the card, felt the weight of expensive paper stock. Thank you. Victoria started to leave, paused, turned back. Mr. Webb, one more thing. That sign language you learned for your daughter, that saved me today. Never think the languages we learn for love are wasted. She walked away before Marcus could respond. Emma tugged his hand, pointed toward the exit. Marcus lifted her onto his hip even though she was technically too old to be carried, felt her weight settle against him, breathed in the strawberry scent of her shampoo. Frank walked them to the parking lot, waited while Marcus buckled Emma into the back seat. The older man's scarred face showed no emotion, but his voice carried something Marcus couldn't quite name. Take tomorrow off. You earned it. My shift will be covered. Already talked to building services. You need a day to process. Marcus wanted to argue, couldn't find the words. Frank continued. What you did today, that's the kind of thing separates men from boys. You got a good kid there. Make sure she knows her dad's someone worth being proud of. She knows. Make sure she keeps knowing. Frank walked away. Marcus climbed into the driver's seat, started the engine, pulled out of the lot. Emma watched Chicago slide past her window, fingers occasionally moving in small signs she made to herself. A private language of processing and understanding. They stopped at Emma's favorite pizza place, thin crust, extra cheese, no questions about homework or bedtime. Sometimes the best parenting was knowing when rules needed breaking. Emma ate 3 slices, drank 2 glasses of lemonade, drew pictures on the paper table covering while Marcus tried to remember how to feel normal. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria Sterling. Thank you again. Please know that what happened today will change things, for both of us. Marcus stared at the message, unsure how to respond. Finally typed, Glad you're safe. Emma looked up from her drawing. Dad okay? Marcus signed, Dad's okay. Just tired, scared. The honesty surprised him. Yeah, scared. Emma reached across the table, patted his hand. Like she was the parent and he the child. It's okay to be scared. Bravery is doing the right thing even when you're scared. That's what Mom said. Marcus's throat tightened. Mom was smart. Emma nodded seriously. Really smart. Then she returned to her drawing, 2 figures holding hands, carefully labeled Dad and Emma in purple marker. They drove home in comfortable silence. Marcus carried Emma upstairs even though she insisted she could walk, tucked her into bed, sat beside her until she fell asleep. His daughter's breathing came steady and even. 731 days of checking that rhythm. Tonight it mattered more than ever. He moved to his own room, sat on the edge of the bed, finally let himself shake. The delayed reaction hit like a wave. His hands trembled, his breathing came quick and shallow. His vision pulsed with the memory of staring down a gun barrel. Sarah's photo sat on his nightstand. 20 years younger, holding infant Emma, smiling at the camera with the confidence of someone who didn't know cancer was already growing in her cells. Marcus picked up the frame, traced her face with one finger. I kept my promise. Emma's safe. But I broke the other one. Almost didn't come home tonight. Sarah's face offered no answers. The dead couldn't provide absolution. Marcus set down the photo, pulled out his phone, looked at Victoria's text. What happened today will change things, for both of us. He had no idea what that meant, but tomorrow would come whether he was ready or not. Tomorrow meant conversations and explanations and decisions about what happened when invisible people became impossible to ignore. For tonight, Emma slept safely in the next room. Frank would cover his shift tomorrow. Victoria Sterling was alive because someone had learned sign language for love and happened to be mopping floors at exactly the right moment. Marcus lay back, closed his eyes, and waited for sleep that would probably take hours to arrive. Marcus woke to gray October light filtering through curtains that needed replacing. 6:40 a.m. His body ached in places he'd forgotten could hurt, shoulders tight from the adrenaline dump, hands still carrying the ghost of tremors from yesterday's close call. Emma's door stood open down the hall, her bed already empty. The smell of burnt toast drifted from the kitchen. He found her at the stove, standing on the step stool she'd outgrown but refused to abandon, attempting to salvage bread that had crossed from golden into charcoal territory. She glanced up, signed one-handed while scraping black residue into the sink. Wanted to make breakfast. Failed. Marcus took over, started fresh slices in the toaster, cracked eggs into a bowl. Emma retreated to the table, pulled out her marine biology book, pretended to read while watching him with the peripheral vigilance she'd developed after Sarah died. Checking. Always checking to make sure he was still there. The eggs sizzled. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Frank. Detective wants your statement this morning. 10 a.m. at the hotel. Brennan will be there too. Take your time getting in. Marcus typed back, "Thanks for yesterday, for Emma." Frank's response came immediately. That's what brothers do. Simple words that landed heavier than they should. Marcus set down the phone, plated the eggs, carried them to the table. Emma closed her book, picked up her fork, ate 3 bites before her hands started moving. "You really saved someone's life." Marcus nodded. The CEO. Bad man was going to hurt her. "Were you scared?" The question deserved honesty. "Terrified. Thought I might not come home." Emma's fork stilled. "But you did. But I did." Her expression shifted into something too old for 9 years. "Mom made you promise to always come home. I heard her that night at the hospital when she thought I was asleep. She made you promise." Marcus's throat closed. You heard that Emma's eyes filled but didn't spill. "I can't hear, but I can see lips, and I can feel when people are saying important things." "She made you promise to come home every night. Yesterday you almost broke that promise." The eggs turned to ash in Marcus's mouth. He set down his fork, signed, "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry for saving someone." Emma wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "Just don't forget you have someone to come home to." The weight of 9 years of loss and resilience stared back at him from across the breakfast table. Marcus reached over, took Emma's hand. "I won't forget, promise." Emma squeezed his fingers, nodded, returned to her eggs. Crisis acknowledged, crisis filed away. Children adapted faster than adults because they had no choice. Marcus dropped Emma at school, Midwest Academy's familiar brick facade, students flowing through doors, signing conversations that needed no sound. Emma paused before getting out, signed, "Love you. Be careful today." Marcus signed back, "Love you too. See you at 4:30. She disappeared into the building. Marcus waited until she was through the doors, then pulled into traffic, headed downtown. Sterling Grand rose against the skyline like a limestone monument to wealth that couldn't prevent its own vulnerability. The parking garage entry looked the same as yesterday, concrete and shadows, and the memory of Derek Vaughn emerging from behind a pillar. Brennan Ashford met him in the lobby, wearing slacks and a blazer that couldn't quite hide the shoulder holster beneath. Her blonde ponytail was pulled tighter than usual, stress written in the set of her jaw. She led him to a conference room on the 3rd floor where Detective Caroline Pritchard sat reviewing a tablet case, files spread across the table like evidence of civilization's fragility. The detective looked up, gestured to a chair. "Mr. Webb, thanks for coming in. I need your complete statement from yesterday, everything you observed from the moment you noticed unusual behavior until the arrest." Marcus sat, recounted the timeline. Victoria's rigid posture, the man's hand placement, the sign language signal, his call to Brennan, the delay tactics, the stairwell confrontation, the fire alarm distraction, Derek Vaughn's weapon aimed at his chest in 3 seconds of darkness. Pritchard recorded everything, occasionally pausing to ask clarifying questions. When did you recognize Ms. Sterling knew sign language? How long did it take you to assess Mr. Vaughn as a professional threat? What made you decide to intervene rather than stay clear? The last question hung in the air longer than the others. Marcus met Pritchard's eyes. My wife made me promise two things before she died. Keep our daughter safe, and don't let Emma grow up thinking nobody helps when it matters. Yesterday I chose to keep the second promise. Pritchard nodded slowly. For the record, your choice saved Ms. Sterling's life. Vaughn had a timeline. If he'd gotten her signature on those contracts before we intervened, Sterling Hotels would have lost majority control by Monday morning. Legal ownership would have transferred to a shell corporation owned by organized crime. Victoria Sterling would have been terminated, possibly permanently. Brennan spoke up from her position near the window. We've been digging into Vaughn's operation since yesterday. He's not small-time. Works for an organization that specializes in hostile takeovers, the kind where executives sign over everything and then disappear. They've pulled this successfully in 4 other cities: Cleveland, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, Denver. Only difference is those executives didn't have someone who could read sign language mopping their floors. Marcus absorbed that. 4 other cities meant 4 other victims who didn't get saved. Pure luck that Victoria had learned ASL. Pure coincidence that Marcus happened to be exactly where he needed to be. Pritchard pulled up a photo on her tablet, turned it toward Marcus. Recognize this man? Gregory Martin Hollis stared from the screen, 50 years old, silver gray hair, expensive suit, the kind of face that inspired trust in boardrooms. Marcus shook his head. Never seen him. Senior Vice President of Operations. 12 years with Sterling Grand. Victoria Sterling's direct report. He cloned his own access badge. Gave Vaughn credentials to enter the building. Provided detailed intelligence on security protocols, staff schedules, Victoria's routine. The photo flicked to financial records, $800,000 in gambling debts accumulated over 3 years. Underground poker rooms, offshore sports betting, high-stakes blackjack in Vegas. He was drowning. Brennan continued the narrative. 6 months ago, Vaughn's organization paid off every cent. In exchange, Hollis became their inside man. Gave them everything they needed to plan the extraction down to the minute. He knew which cameras had blind spots, knew Victoria's schedule, knew the VIP wing would be empty between 2 and 3 p.m. on Wednesdays because housekeeping does deep cleans Monday and Friday. Marcus felt the shape of the betrayal. 12 years of trust purchased for less than $1 million. How much was Victoria supposed to sign over? Pritchard pulled up another document. The contract would have transferred 51% of Sterling Hotels' ownership to a Cayman Islands corporation. Market value approximately $200 million. Vaughn's organization would have taken controlling interest, installed their own board, liquidated assets, and disappeared within 6 months. Victoria would have been left with 49% of a gutted company. The numbers were abstract until Marcus imagined them as human cost. 200 million meant hundreds of employees, people like Frank and Sarah Whitmore and the housekeeping staff who kept the hotel running. Families depending on paychecks that would have evaporated while criminals stripped the copper wiring. Where's Hollis now? Pritchard's expression hardened. Cook County Jail. No bail. He's facing conspiracy to commit kidnapping, extortion, fraud. Looking at 20 to 30 years if convicted. His lawyer's already trying to negotiate a plea deal in exchange for testimony about Vaughn's organization. And Vaughn maximum security. The man's got a list of priors that reads like a crime textbook. This was his 5th attempted corporate extraction. The first 4 succeeded because there was no early warning system, no janitor who could read sign language and think tactically under pressure. Marcus shifted in his seat. I didn't do anything special, just delayed him. You coordinated the actual response. Brennan moved from the window, sat across from him. Webb, you've got 12 years of corporate security experience. You recognized a professional threat in 3 seconds. You created strategic delays without tipping off the subject. You marked your position for tactical response. You put yourself between a hostage and a loaded weapon. That's not nothing. That's textbook crisis intervention. I just did what needed doing. Pritchard closed her tablet. That's the definition of courage. Doing what needs doing when everyone else freezes. The interview continued another 20 minutes, verification of details, timeline confirmation. Technical questions about Vaughn's behavior and weapon handling. Finally, Pritchard extended her hand. We're done. You'll need to be available for the trial probably 6 to 9 months from now. Until then, try to get back to normal. Marcus shook her hand. Wondered what normal meant when yesterday had fractured the boundary between invisible maintenance worker and person who mattered. Brennan walked him to the elevator, pressed the button for the executive level. Victoria wants to see you. She's been in her office since 7 a.m. I should get back to work. My shift, Frank already covered it. And building services manager approved personal leave through Monday. You're not on the clock. The elevator arrived. Brennan held the door. Webb, one more thing. What you did yesterday, that kind of action changes how people see you. Changes how you see yourself. Don't be surprised if the next few weeks feel disorienting. The doors closed before Marcus could respond. The elevator rose smoothly, deposited him on the executive floor carpet thick enough to silence footsteps art on the walls that probably cost more than his annual salary. Sarah Whitmore sat at the reception desk, looked up with a smile that carried more warmth than professional courtesy required. Mr. Webb, Ms. Sterling asked me to send you in immediately. Marcus approached Victoria's office door, knocked twice. Her voice came through clear, "Come in." Victoria Sterling's office occupied a corner with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Chicago. Lake Michigan stretched east gray water meeting gray sky at a horizon line that blurred with October haze. She stood at the glass coffee cup in hand, still wearing yesterday's rumpled suit. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. She'd probably slept here. She turned when Marcus entered. "Please sit. I need to talk with you about several things." Marcus sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Victoria remained standing, seemed to need the window at her back like armor. "Yesterday I almost died in a building I own. The person who saved me was someone whose name I didn't know. Someone I walked past every morning without acknowledgement. That's unacceptable." "Ma'am, you had no reason to notice maintenance," Victoria cut him off. "That's exactly the problem. I've spent 25 years building this company, created 14 hotels across the Midwest, prided myself on attention to detail. And I didn't know the man who mopped my lobby had 12 years of security expertise and a daughter who taught him to see the world differently. That failure is mine." Marcus didn't know how to respond. Victoria set down her coffee, moved to her desk, pulled out a file folder. "Detective Pritchard briefed me this morning. Gregory Hollis betrayed this company because he was drowning in debt, and I never noticed. I worked with him 12 years, never asked if he needed help, never created an environment where admitting struggle was possible. You can't see what people hide." Victoria's eyes sharpened. "You're wrong. I didn't see because I didn't look. There's a difference." She opened the folder. "Yesterday you used sign language to understand what I couldn't say out loud. That saved my life. I learned sign language 18 months ago for a charity program supporting deaf children. My younger brother Daniel died when he was 9. I was 17 driving the car. He died, I lived. I've spent 31 years trying to justify that. The confession landed raw and unfiltered. Marcus understood survivor's guilt intimately, had lived with it for 2 years since Sarah's death. I'm sorry about your brother. Victoria waved off the sympathy. I learned sign language because I sponsor the Midwest Deaf Children's Foundation. Thought it would honor Daniel somehow. Never imagined that skill would save my life. She pulled out another document. You learned sign language because you have a 9-year-old daughter who's deaf. When I signed to you yesterday, you didn't hesitate. Marcus found his voice. There wasn't time to hesitate. But if I'm honest, I did hesitate. 1 second. Thought about Emma. She needs me. But then I thought about my wife before she died. Victoria waited, gave him space for the words that came slowly. Sarah had cancer. Near the end, she made me promise 2 things. Let Emma live without being caged by fear, and don't let Emma grow up thinking nobody helps when it matters. His hands clenched in his lap. Love isn't what you say in the easy moments. It's what you do in the hard ones. Yesterday was a hard one. The words hung between them, truth distilled to its essential weight. Victoria returned to the window, looked out at the city. I spent 20 years building walls to protect myself. Physical walls, emotional walls, corporate hierarchy walls. Today I learned walls don't keep you safe. They keep you alone. She turned back. Yesterday I learned that safety came from connection, from building bridges instead of walls, from learning a language that wasn't mine, from trust. Marcus watched her process the revelation in real time, defenses cracking under the weight of yesterday's near death. Victoria pulled a business card from her desk, set it on the table between them. I want to create a fund to support families with children who have disabilities. Scholarships, therapy, equipment, family services. I'd like to name it after your daughter, the Emma Webb Foundation. Marcus stared at the card. That's generous, but it's not charity. It's recognition. Because you learned your daughter's language, you were able to help someone desperately. That deserves to be honored. My daughter's name on a foundation feels like what? Like I'm accepting payment for doing what was right. Victoria's expression shifted, understanding landing. You're correct. Let me reframe. I'm creating this foundation because yesterday taught me that investing in people creates value money can't measure. Your daughter will benefit from this fund eventually. So will 80 other families in the first year. Is accepting help for your child equivalent to accepting payment for heroism? The distinction mattered. Marcus thought about therapy costs, about Emma's needs as she grew older, about the financial calculations that woke him at 3 a.m. If you frame it that way, yes, I accept. Good. She pulled out another document. Second thing, I'm offering you a position. Director of Employee Safety and Wellness, $85,000 annually. Flexible schedule to accommodate your daughter's needs. You would oversee security protocols, employee support programs, crisis response systems. Marcus felt the air leave his lungs. Ma'am, I'm a janitor. I don't have a college degree. You have something better. 12 years of corporate security experience, the ability to assess threats and coordinate tactical response, lived experience of being overlooked and undervalued. This organization needs someone who understands what frontline workers face. The offer was seismic, more than triple his current salary, a title that carried authority, recognition that felt simultaneously thrilling and terrifying. But something in Marcus recoiled from accepting what felt like charity dressed as promotion. He met Victoria's eyes. I appreciate the offer, but I need to be honest. I don't want a job because someone feels guilty. I don't want charity disguised as promotion. If you're offering this because you believe I'm qualified, say that clearly. If it's because you feel you owe me, I'll respectfully decline. Victoria straightened, respect flickering across her face. She walked back to her desk, pulled up files on her computer. You're right to demand clarity. Here's why you're qualified. Yesterday, you identified a professional threat in under 5 seconds. You coordinated with my security chief using tactical language that demonstrated operational expertise. You created strategic delays under pressure without escalating the threat. You positioned yourself between a hostage and an armed suspect. She turned the screen toward him. Brennan Ashford sent me this assessment report. She says you displayed better crisis management than half the security professionals she worked with in 10 years at Chicago PD. Marcus read the report, saw his actions from yesterday translated into professional terminology that made them sound more impressive than they'd felt at the time. Brennan had noted his tactical communication, his threat assessment accuracy, his ability to maintain operational security while coordinating emergency response. Victoria continued, I need someone who can identify security vulnerabilities before they become crises. Someone who can train employees to recognize danger, someone who understands what it feels like to be invisible in your own workplace. Power isn't having people fear you. It's having people trust you enough to tell you when you're wrong. Yesterday, you showed me I was wrong about everything. You're exactly who I need. Not because I'm grateful, because you're qualified. The words shifted the equation from charity to opportunity. Marcus considered Emma's therapy costs, the cramped apartment, the future he wanted to build for his daughter. 3 conditions. 1, Emma's school schedule means I need to leave at 4 p.m. most days. 2, health insurance that covers her therapy without crushing deductibles. 3, I need to know this isn't temporary, that I'm not being set up to fail. Victoria didn't hesitate. All 3 conditions. In writing. Contract starts Monday if you accept. Marcus extended his hand across the desk. I accept. Victoria's handshake was firm, businesslike, the grip of someone closing a deal that mattered. Welcome to management, Mr. Webb. We have a lot of work to do. One more thing. Marcus withdrew his hand. My shift today, I should finish it. Even if I'm starting the new position Monday, I want to complete what I was hired to do. Victoria studied him. You're worried about leaving Frank short-staffed. Frank covered for me yesterday when I was coordinating the emergency response. Least I can do is finish today's routes. Brennan was right about you. Victoria returned to her computer. Go finish your shift, but Monday morning 8 a.m. you report here. We'll start with a complete security audit of all 14 Sterling properties. Marcus stood, moved toward the door, paused with his hand on the handle. Miss Sterling, Victoria, thank you for learning sign language, for building that bridge. Without it, I wouldn't have known you needed help. Victoria's expression softened. Thank you for being someone who knew how to cross it. The rest of Friday passed in surreal normalcy. Marcus returned to his janitor duties, mopped floors that still needed mopping, cleaned conference rooms that still required cleaning. Frank found him near the VIP elevators around 2 p.m., handed him a cup of coffee without comment. They drank in companionable slints. 2 men who understood that some conversations required no words. Marcus picked up Emma at 4:30. She signed questions about his day that he answered with careful omissions. Yes, he'd given his statement to the police. Yes, everything was fine. No. He couldn't discuss details yet. Emma accepted the evasions with the patience of a child who'd learned that adults sometimes needed time before truth. Saturday and Sunday blurred together, grocery shopping, laundry. Emma's homework, the ordinary rhythms of life that felt both comforting and strange after Thursday's adrenaline. Marcus found himself checking locks twice, startling at unexpected sounds, his body still processing trauma his mind wanted to file away. Monday morning arrived too quickly. Marcus dressed in khakis and a button-down shirt that felt like costume rather than clothing. The mirror showed a man playing dress-up, a janitor pretending to be management. Emma caught him adjusting his collar for the third time, signed, "You look professional. Stop fidgeting." Marcus signed back, nervous. Emma rolled her eyes with the exasperation only 9-year-olds could muster. "You saved someone's life. You can handle wearing nice pants." The observation was logical enough to cut through anxiety. Marcus dropped Emma at school, drove to Sterling Grand, parked in the employee lot. His badge still worked at the service entrance. Muscle memory carried him toward the locker room before conscious thought intervened. He didn't need to change into maintenance uniform anymore. The executive floor felt foreign in morning light. Sarah Whitmore greeted him with genuine warmth. "Mr. Webb, your office is ready. Third door on the left." The office was modest, one window, a desk, computer, filing cabinets. But it was his name on a placard outside, his space to occupy. Marcus stood in the doorway trying to reconcile this reality with 10 months of pushing a mop cart. Brennan appeared behind him. "Welcome to management." "Coffee." They walked to the break room, different from the basement employee space, furnished with better chairs and a coffee maker that produced actual espresso. Brennan poured 2 cups, handed one to Marcus. "Don't let imposter syndrome eat you alive. You earned this." "Earned? I feel like I'm playing pretend. Everyone feels that way the first week. Give it time." They sat at a small table. Marcus sipped coffee that tasted exponentially better than basement break room swill. Brennan pulled out a tablet. "Victoria wants a complete security audit of all Sterling properties. 14 hotels across 6 states. We're looking for vulnerabilities, badge access gaps, surveillance, blind spots, employee safety protocols, emergency response plans." "That's a lot of ground to cover. You've got budget and authority. Hire consultants if needed. But Victoria specifically wants your assessment first. Fresh eyes that understand both security expertise and frontline worker experience." Marcus processed the scope. "Where do I start here? This building. Yesterday showed us critical failures. Inside threat went undetected for 6 months. Emergency response coordination was improvised rather than planned. Employee safety protocols are inadequate. Your maintenance staff work alone in isolated areas with no panic buttons or check-in systems." The observation stung because it was accurate. Marcus had worked 10 months in conditions that left him vulnerable. "How did Vaughn enter the building originally?" Brennan pulled up security footage. "Parking garage, 1:47 p.m. Watch the vehicle entrance." The video showed a service van with Sterling Grand logo on the side, legitimate looking enough to pass casual inspection. Vaughn climbed out wearing maintenance uniform, badge clipped to his belt face, calm and unhurried. He swiped the badge, Gregory Hollis's cloned credentials, and entered without triggering any alarms. "Who verified that van?" "No one. Our protocol assumes anyone with valid badge access belongs here." Brennan fast-forwarded through footage. Vaughn spent 16 minutes surveying the building before intercepting Victoria in the parking garage. He knew exactly where cameras had blind spots, knew which routes security monitored actively versus passively, knew the VIP wing would be empty because Hollis told him everything. Brennan nodded. "Your first assignment, design a protocol that prevents this from happening again. Assume we have another insider threat we haven't identified. How do we protect against that?" Marcus thought about it. 2-factor authentication for executive floor access. Biometric scanners in addition to badge swipe. Mandatory check-ins for anyone working alone. Panic buttons in every break room and isolated work area. Random security audits that can't be predicted. Good start. Get it in writing. Victoria wants recommendations by Friday. The week accelerated into a blur of meetings, assessments, learning curves steep enough to induce vertigo. Marcus toured Sterling Grand's infrastructure with Ethan Callahan, the technology specialist who'd cut the lights during Vaughn's arrest. 30 years old, red hair, freckles, the kind of technical expertise that made complex systems seem simple. Ethan explained the surveillance network, 84 cameras covering lobby hallways, elevators, parking areas. But gaps existed. Service corridors had minimal coverage. The loading dock surveillance failed regularly. Camera angles created blind spots near emergency exits. Marcus took notes, mapped vulnerabilities, developed a mental model of how a professional threat would move through the building. By Wednesday, he'd identified 24 specific weaknesses ranging from inadequate lighting to unsupervised vendor access. Thursday morning brought a foundation planning meeting. Victoria had assembled a team, Dr. Margaret Winters from the Midwest Deaf Children's Foundation, a legal advisor, an accountant, and Marcus. They gathered in a conference room overlooking the city autumn sun slanting through glass. Dr. Winters was 50, gray hair, pulled back eyes that radiated competence and compassion. She'd brought portfolio materials, scholarship structures, therapy funding models, family support programs. We're proposing 3 tiers of assistance: educational scholarships for deaf and disabled children, medical and therapy funding with no income restrictions, family support services including counseling, job placement, and community resources. Victoria reviewed the materials. Budget $5 million, initial funding replenished annually from Sterling Hotel's profits. Legal advisor can structure it as a non-profit foundation with tax advantages. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. This is a lot of money attached to my daughter's name. Victoria turned to him. It's attached to what you represent. Every family struggling to support a child with disabilities deserves to know help exists. Your daughter is the symbol, but this serves everyone. Dr. Winters added, we're planning to launch publicly in January. Ceremony at Sterling Grand. First scholarship recipients announced. Media coverage to raise awareness. Marcus thought about Emma's reaction. She'd be simultaneously thrilled and mortified by public attention. Can my daughter be involved in selecting recipients? This can't be ceremonial for her. She needs to understand the impact. Victoria nodded. Agreed. Emma should review applications, meet families, understand how this helps people. She's part of this. The meeting continued another hour. Legal structures, fund management, publicity strategy. Marcus contributed when asked, mostly absorbed information that felt both overwhelming and necessary. By the time they broke for lunch, the Emma Webb Foundation had moved from concept to operational plan. Friday brought Marcus's first major deliverable, the security assessment report. 24 pages of vulnerabilities, recommendations, cost projections. He'd worked until midnight Thursday, completing it, triple-checking every detail. Because first impressions mattered when you were 48 years old and proving yourself in a field you'd left behind. Victoria called him to her office at 3 p.m. She'd printed the report, marked it with red pen, made notes in margins. She looked up when Marcus entered. This is excellent work. Comprehensive, specific, actionable. How much will implementation cost? Marcus swallowed. $3 million for biometric scanners, upgraded surveillance, and infrastructure improvements. Another $1.5 million annually for expanded security personnel and ongoing training. Victoria didn't flinch at the numbers. What's the cost if we don't implement another Gregory Hollis, another Derek Vaughn? Another hostage situation where someone might not survive. She set down the report. I'm presenting this to the board next week. I want you there to explain the recommendations. The prospect of facing Sterling's board of directors triggered fresh anxiety. I'm not a public speaker. You coordinated a crisis response under gunfire. You can handle 14 business people in a conference room. Marcus wanted to argue, couldn't find grounds for refusal that didn't sound like cowardice. What day? Wednesday, 10 a.m. Bring your security expertise and be prepared to defend these numbers. Some board members will push back on cost. She met his eyes. But I'm also presenting a broader proposal. Living wage increases for all frontline workers. Expanded benefits. Profit sharing. Your security recommendations are part of a complete operational overhaul. That's going to be expensive. Victoria's expression hardened with determination. Employee turnover costs us more than fair wages. Gregory Hollis betrayed us because he was desperate and had no support system. I'm done building companies on the backs of people I don't value properly. The statement carried weight of genuine transformation, not charity, not guilt, but recognition that business models built on exploitation contain their own destruction. Marcus respected that, understood it, hoped the board would too. Wednesday morning arrived with October rain turning Chicago gray and cold. Marcus dressed in his best clothes, still not expensive but clean and professional. Emma signed encouragement at breakfast, told him to pretend the board members were just people who also got nervous sometimes. The boardroom occupied Sterling Grand's top-floor panoramic windows, offering views that probably cost extra in architect fees. 14 seats around a massive table, each occupied by people whose net worth exceeded Marcus's lifetime earning potential. Victoria sat at the head, Marcus to her right, Brennan on her left. Thomas Edward Ridley spoke first, 62, silver hair, old money radiating from his tailored suit. Let's discuss this proposal. You're asking for $3 million in security upgrades, $1.5 million annual operating costs, $2 million in wage increases, and another $1 million for benefits expansion. That's $7.5 million added expense annually. Victoria remained calm. That's correct. I'm also proposing profit sharing for all employees and comprehensive wellness programs. Patricia Ann Lang leaned forward, 58 institutional investor eyes that calculated return on investment automatically. This is a hotel company, not a charity. Shareholders expect profits, not philanthropy. Victoria's voice carried steel beneath velvet. Shareholders should expect hotels that don't make national news for hostage situations. She pulled up a presentation on the screen. Last Thursday, Gregory Hollis, senior VP I trusted for 12 years, betrayed us because gambling debts owned him. He sold us out for $800,000. Our security protocols failed to detect it. Our employee support systems failed to help him. And we came within minutes of losing controlling interest to organized crime. The room went quiet. Victoria advanced the slide. Marcus Webb, our new director of employee safety, has identified 24 critical vulnerabilities. I've invited him to present recommendations. 14 pairs of eyes turned toward Marcus. His mouth went dry. Brennan caught his eye, nodded encouragement. Frank's voice echoed from memory. Show up. Do the job. Be someone people can respect. Marcus stood, approached the screen, pulled up his first slide. I worked as day maintenance here for 10 months. Before that, 12 years in corporate security. Last week I was mopping floors when I saw our CEO being held at gunpoint. He walked them through the timeline, recognizing the threat, coordinating response, creating delays. The near-fatal confrontation. Then he pivoted to analysis. Derek Vaughn succeeded because Gregory Hollis gave him everything. Badge access, security schedules, surveillance blind spots, employee routines, and Hollis succeeded because he was desperate, isolated, and had no support system. William Russell Blackwell spoke, 50 hotel industry veteran, skeptical expression. You're saying we should pay people more because it improves security. I'm saying when you value people, they value their work. When they value their work, they pay attention. Attention prevents disasters. Marcus pulled up financial data. Employee turnover in housekeeping averages 40% annually. Recruitment and training cost $8,000 per position. At 40% turnover, we're spending $640,000 annually just replacing housekeeping staff. Patricia Lang's expression sharpened with interest. What would living wage plus profit sharing cost for that department? $450,000 annually. We save money and get experienced staff who notice when something's wrong. Ridley leaned back. That's compelling for one department. What about company-wide? Marcus pulled up the spreadsheet he'd built over 3 sleepless nights. Company-wide wage increases, benefits, expansion, and profit-sharing cost approximately $7 million annually. Current turnover across all positions costs us $9.3 million in recruitment training and lost productivity. We net save $2.3 million while creating safer, more attentive workforce. The room absorbed that. Brennan stood, added her perspective. Since implementing preliminary security upgrades, we've detected 2 more potential insider threats, employees with financial stress who became targets for exploitation. We connected them with support services before they became vulnerabilities. That's direct return on investment. Blackwell studied the numbers. These projections assume turnover drops significantly. Marcus met his eyes. Real men don't measure their worth by their paycheck. They measure it by who shows up when they give their word. Pay people fairly, support them properly, and they show up. They pay attention. They become your first line of defense. The words hung in boardroom air, thick with decades of quarterly earnings priorities. Victoria let the silence stretch, then spoke. I'm calling for a vote. All proposed changes, security upgrades, wage increases, benefits, expansion, profit sharing. $5 million annual investment that returns $7 million in reduced costs and immeasurably improved safety. Ridley studied the financial models. I move we approve the security upgrades and wage increases. Hold profit sharing for next quarter review. Victoria's eyes narrowed. Package deal or no deal? Patricia Lang made a note on her tablet. I second the motion as modified. Approve security wages and benefits. Delay profit sharing pending Q4 results. The vote split the room. Arguments erupted: cost concerns versus safety priorities. Shareholder value versus employee investment. Short-term expense versus long-term stability. Marcus sat quietly watching his proposal dissected by people who measured risk in spreadsheet terms. Finally, after 40 minutes of debate, Victoria called the question. All in favor of the complete package, security, wages, benefits, profit sharing, raise your hand. 11 hands rose. 3 abstained. The motion carried. Victoria's expression remained neutral, but Marcus caught the flash of triumph in her eyes. Motion passes 11-3. Implementation begins immediately. The meeting adjourned. Board members filed out, some congratulating Marcus on his presentation, others clearly uncomfortable with the expense commitment. Patricia Lang paused on her way out. Mr. Webb, those numbers better hold. If turnover doesn't drop as projected, this vote will be revisited. Marcus met her gaze. They'll hold. When the room cleared, Victoria approached, extended her hand. Well done. You just convinced some of the most skeptical people in Chicago to invest $7 million in workers they previously viewed as replaceable. Marcus shook her hand. They're not replaceable. That's the point. Victoria smiled, genuine warmth that softened the CEO armor. Come on, I want to show you something. She led him to a smaller conference room where Emma sat at the table coloring while Frank Morrison watched over her. Emma looked up, face lighting with recognition. Dad, Mr. Frank picked me up early. Said you were doing something important. Marcus signed, very important. How was school? Emma signed back her day while gathering her drawings. Victoria watched the exchange, then knelt to Emma's eye level, signed. Your dad just convinced 14 people to make this hotel safer for everyone who works here. Emma studied Victoria with assessment beyond her years. You're the lady Dad saved. Victoria nodded. I am. And now I'm trying to help your dad save other people by building better systems. Emma considered this, then pulled out one of her drawings, 2 figures holding hands labeled carefully in purple marker. This is you and Dad. You both help people. Victoria accepted the drawing, held it gently. Thank you, Emma. I'll keep this in my office. The exchange was simple, innocent, free of the complexity that defined adult interactions. Emma packed her school bag, took Marcus's hand. Can we get pizza? It's Friday. Marcus looked to Victoria, who smiled. Go. You've earned it. And Emma, thank you for the drawing. It's beautiful. They left Sterling Grand as afternoon faded toward evening, the hotel's lights beginning their nightly illumination. Emma chattered about marine biology and signs that required both hands, forcing Marcus to watch the sidewalk rather than her conversation. But he caught enough excitement about bioluminescent fish, questions about why creatures adapted to darkness, wonder at nature's solutions to impossible problems. They ate at Gino's East deep dish pizza that Emma devoured with enthusiasm that required no translation. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Board approved the foundation at $5 million annual funding. Launch ceremony scheduled January 15th. More to discuss Monday. Marcus set down the phone, watched his daughter draw sea creatures on the paper tablecloth, and felt the shape of his life shifting into something unrecognizable. 2 weeks ago, he'd mopped floors and cashed paychecks that barely covered rent. Tonight, he was director of employee safety with a salary that meant Emma's therapy was affordable, and the foundation bearing her name would help 80 families in its first year. Love isn't what you say in the easy moments. The words echoed from his conversation with Victoria, truth that Sarah had taught him and yesterday had proven. This was a hard moment stretched across weeks of transformation, and he was choosing to show up despite fear and imposter syndrome, and the persistent feeling that he was playing a role beyond his qualifications. Emma looked up from her drawing. Dad, you're thinking too loud. Marcus signed, sorry. Just processing big changes. Good changes. He considered honestly. Yeah, good changes. Scary but good. Emma reached across the table, patted his hand, with the gravity of someone much older. Scary is okay. Brave means doing important things even when they're scary. That's what Mom said. Marcus's throat tightened. Mom was very smart, the smartest. Emma returned to her drawing conversation, concluded, truth delivered. They finished dinner, drove home through Chicago streets slick with rain. Emma fell asleep in the back seat, exhaustion from a week of changes finally claiming her. Marcus carried her upstairs, still light enough to lift, though she grew heavier each month, and tucked her into bed without waking her. She'd outgrown being carried soon, childhood measured in thresholds crossed until suddenly your daughter was grown and gone. Marcus stood in her doorway, watched her breathe, counted 5 steady cycles. 745 days since Sarah died. Each one a small miracle of survival. Each one evidence that broken families could rebuild themselves into new shapes. His phone buzzed again. Text from Frank, proud of you, Webb. You did good work today. Marcus typed back. Couldn't have done it without you watching my 6. Frank's response came immediately. That's what brothers do. See you Monday. Simple words that meant everything. Marcus set down the phone, looked at Emma's sleeping form, and allowed himself to believe that maybe the promises he'd made to Sarah were being kept after all. Not perfectly, not without fear or struggle or nights when grief ambushed him in the shower, but kept nonetheless. He'd shown up, done the work, built bridges instead of walls, and tomorrow he'd do it again, and the day after, and all the days that followed, until Emma was grown and could build her own bridges with the language of love he'd taught her. That was enough. That had to be enough. That was everything. January 15th arrived, cold and bright. Chicago winter stripped down to essentials: white sky, gray buildings, wind that cut through wool coats like they were tissue paper. Marcus stood in Sterling Grand's lobby at noon watching the transformation take shape. 200 folding chairs arranged in rows facing a small stage. Audio equipment tested and retested. Media crews positioning cameras. Dr. Margaret Winters directing volunteers with the efficiency of someone who'd orchestrated dozens of charity events. Emma sat in the front row wearing the navy dress Victoria had helped her pick out last week. Purple ribbons in her dark hair because Sarah had loved purple. She was practicing her speech hands moving through sign language she'd memorized, lips forming words she couldn't hear herself speak. 10 years old now, birthday having passed in November, tall enough that strangers sometimes guessed 12. Frank Morrison appeared at Marcus's elbow wearing a suit that looked uncomfortable on his marine-hardened frame. "You ready for this?" Marcus adjusted his tie for the 5th time. 200 people are about to hear me talk about the worst and best moment of my life. Define ready. Frank's scarred face creased into something resembling a smile. That means you're ready. Scared means you understand what matters. The foundation had consumed 3 months of planning legal incorporation, fund management structures, scholarship selection criteria, publicity coordination. Marcus had reviewed applications from 87 families, read stories of struggle that made his chest tight, understood viscerally that Emma's challenges were shared by thousands. The Emma Webb Foundation would launch today with $5 million and the promise of changing lives. Victoria emerged from the executive offices wearing a charcoal suit that somehow managed to look both professional and approachable. She'd changed since October, subtle shifts in posture, the way she moved through spaces, how she made eye contact with employees. The walls she'd built for 25 years were coming down, brick by brick. She approached Marcus, handed him a folder. Final guest list. Senator Brennan's office confirmed attendance. 3 local news stations. Chicago Tribune is sending a reporter. This will get significant coverage. Marcus scanned. The list felt his anxiety ratchet higher. I'm going to be on television talking about sign language and dead wives and almost getting shot. Victoria's expression softened. You're going to be on television talking about love and courage and why paying attention to each other matters. The rest is just context. Emma bounced over, signed excitedly, "Miss Victoria." "The reporters want to interview me. Can I?" Victoria knelt, signed back, "Only if you're comfortable. You can say no." Emma considered this with the seriousness she applied to important decisions. I want to tell them about Mom and why Dad learned sign language." Marcus felt pride and terror in equal measure. His daughter was braver than he'd ever been. "Okay, but I'll be right there with you." The ceremony began at 2 p.m. Attendees filled chairs, scholarship families, donors, Sterling hotels, employees, media representatives, politicians who'd come for photo opportunities. Dr. Winters took the stage first, welcomed everyone, explained the foundation's mission. Educational support, therapy, funding, family services for children with disabilities across the Midwest. She introduced the first speaker, Patricia Lang from Sterling's board, who'd initially opposed the foundation funding but now spoke eloquently about corporate responsibility and community investment. Politics made strange bedfellows, Marcus thought, watching a woman who'd fought him in the boardroom now championing his daughter's legacy. Then Victoria took the stage. 3 months ago, I almost died in this building. The person who saved me was someone whose name I didn't know, whose presence I'd never acknowledged, whose expertise I'd never recognized because I'd stopped seeing people. She paused, let that confession land. That failure taught me something crucial. The languages we learn for love create bridges that can save lives. Marcus Webb learned sign language because he loves his daughter. That language allowed him to understand my silent cry for help. That bridge saved me. The audience was rapt silent. Victoria continued. This foundation exists because one father paid attention. Because one child taught her father to see the world differently. Because love expressed through action creates value that compounds across generations. We're launching with $5 million. 87 families will receive support this year. But the real investment is in the principle that no family should face disability alone. She gestured toward Marcus. I'd like to invite our Director of Employee Safety and Wellness to share his perspective. Marcus climbed the stage on legs that felt disconnected from his nervous system. 200 faces watched him. Cameras recorded. This would exist forever, archived proof of either eloquence or humiliation. He gripped the podium, looked out at the audience, found Emma in the front row. She signed, "You can do this." Marcus began, his voice steadier than expected. When my daughter was born deaf, I was terrified. I didn't know her world. I had to learn it. Learn to see reflections instead of hear footsteps. Learn to watch faces instead of listen to tone. Learn that silence isn't empty, it's full of meaning. He saw heads nodding, people leaning forward. 3 months ago, that learning saved someone's life. Not because I'm special, because I paid attention. Because I learned a language that wasn't mine. Because love means more than what you say in comfortable moments, it's what you do when everything's hard. The words echoed his conversation with Victoria from October Truth, distilled through repetition into something crystalline. This foundation isn't about money. It's about attention. About learning each other's languages, not just sign language, but the language of struggle, of hope. Of families doing their best with limited resources. He found Victoria in the second row, her eyes bright with emotion. To every parent here raising a child with disabilities, you're not alone. You're not invisible. We see you. This foundation sees you. His gaze shifted back to Emma, who was crying and signing simultaneously. Proud of you. Marcus continued, his voice thickening. My wife Sarah taught me the meaning of love before she died. She said, don't let fear cage our daughter. Let her fall sometimes. That's how she learns to stand. This foundation is about helping families stand, about catching them when they fall, about creating communities where no one faces impossible challenges alone. The applause started before he finished, swelled into something that felt like validation and relief and shared understanding. Marcus stepped back from the podium, let the sound wash over him. Understood that this moment would mark the dividing line between who he'd been and who he was becoming. Dr. Winters returned to announce the first scholarship recipients, 10 families whose children would receive educational support, therapy funding, family counseling. Each family's representative came to the stage, collected envelopes, shook hands, posed for photographs that would appear in tomorrow's Tribune. Then Emma took the microphone. Dr. Winters had offered to interpret, but Emma had insisted on speaking herself, using the careful articulation she'd practiced with speech therapists. Her voice came out slightly too loud, vowels shaped oddly, but every word was clear. I can't hear myself talk. But I know words matter because my dad learned my language. He learned because he loves me. Miss Victoria learned sign language because she loves children like me. Love means learning. Learning means paying attention. Thank you for paying attention to us. The simplicity devastated. Adults who'd come prepared for corporate charity discovered themselves confronting a 10-year-old's unvarnished truth. The applause this time carried a different quality, softer, more personal. The sound of 200 people recognizing their own failures to pay attention. The ceremony concluded with reception in the hotel's ballroom, champagne and hors d'oeuvres, networking and congratulations. The mechanical social performance that followed successful events. Marcus found himself surrounded by people wanting to shake his hand, thank him, share their own stories of disability and struggle and triumph. Emma handled the attention with grace beyond her years, signing conversations with deaf attendees, patiently explaining her marine biology interest to anyone who asked. She'd inherited Sarah's social ease, the ability to make strangers feel comfortable. Victoria circulated through the crowd, stopped beside Marcus during a rare moment of solitude. "Your daughter is remarkable." Marcus watched Emma demonstrate bioluminescent fish gestures to a fascinated reporter. "She gets that from her mother. Sarah could talk to anyone." Victoria's expression carried something Marcus couldn't quite identify. "Emma invited me to your Friday pizza tradition, if the offer still stands." The invitation had been Emma's idea 3 weeks ago, presented with the determined confidence of a child who'd decided the adults in her life needed help. Marcus had agreed because refusing felt like denying something Emma needed: normalcy, family structure, the presence of adults who showed up consistently. "Offer stands. Gino's East 6:30, I'll be there." The crowd eventually dispersed. Media crews packed equipment. Sterling's maintenance staff began breaking down chairs, returning the lobby to its usual pristine condition. Marcus helped where he could, old habits pulling him toward familiar work even though his role had changed. Frank found him stacking chairs. "Leave it. You're management now. Let the crew handle this. Feels wrong to watch other people do work I know how to do." Frank pulled 2 chairs away from Marcus, set them down firmly. "That's your weakness talking. You know how to do everything, so you try to do everything. Delegate. Trust people. That's what leaders do." The advice landed harder than Frank probably intended. Marcus stepped back, let the maintenance crew continue their work, accepted that his role had evolved beyond direct action into coordination and trust. Emma appeared with her coat signed, "Can we go? I'm tired." They walked to the parking garage together. Chicago evening, already dark at 5:30, winter compressing daylight into scarce commodity. Emma chattered about the reporters, the families she'd met, the therapy equipment the foundation would provide. Her excitement was contagious, infectious hope that spread through proximity. Friday evening arrived with Emma practically vibrating with anticipation. She'd changed clothes 3 times, settled on jeans and her favorite purple sweater, brushed her hair until it shone. Marcus recognized the signs. His daughter had decided Victoria was important, worth impressing, someone who might become permanent. The observation carried weight and danger in equal measure. Marcus had kept his distance from romantic entanglement for 2 years, protecting himself and Emma from the vulnerability that came with caring. But Emma had made her decision unilaterally, and 10-year-olds possessed a clarity adults spent lifetimes trying to recapture. Victoria arrived at Gino's East exactly on time, wearing jeans and a sweater that looked casual, but probably cost more than Marcus's monthly rent. She'd pulled her dark hair into a ponytail, minimal makeup, the armor of corporate leadership stripped away to reveal someone who looked younger and more uncertain. Emma greeted her with a hug that Victoria returned with visible surprise. They slid into a booth, Emma on the inside, Marcus beside her, Victoria across. The waiter brought menus they didn't need because Emma always ordered the same thing. Victoria studied the paper tablecloth, the crayons provided for children, the casual chaos of a restaurant that prioritized food over atmosphere. "This is perfect." Emma was already drawing her hands, moving through the unconscious creativity that filled notebooks at home. She drew sea creatures, jellyfish and anglerfish, and creatures that existed only in imagination. Victoria watched with genuine interest, asked questions in sign language that Emma answered with increasing animation. Marcus observed their interaction, saw something shifting in real time. Victoria laughed at Emma's joke about bioluminescent fish, her expression open in ways it never was at Sterling Grand. Emma responded by drawing Victoria into the picture, a figure holding hands with the marine biologist Emma hoped to become. The pizza arrived deep dish that required structural engineering to extract a slice. Emma devoured hers with the unself-conscious enthusiasm only children possessed. Victoria ate more slowly, seemed to be processing the experience of normalcy after a lifetime of expensive restaurants and business dinners. Emma finished first, wiped her hands, signed to Marcus. "Can I go play arcade games?" Marcus handed her quarters, watched her bounce toward the vintage machines near the entrance. Victoria tracked her movements, smiled. "She's wonderful, so confident. The confidence is new." First few years after Sarah died, Emma was terrified I'd disappear too. Wouldn't let me out of her sight. Victoria's gaze returned to Marcus. "How did you help her through that?" Showed up. "Every day, every promise kept, every fear acknowledged. You can't logic away grief, you just survive it together until surviving becomes living again." The words hung between them heavier than Marcus intended. Victoria reached for her water glass, hands not quite steady. "I never had children. My marriage ended because I couldn't let anyone close enough to build family. Control felt safer than vulnerability. What changed? You put yourself between me and a loaded weapon. That kind of action makes walls feel like cowardice rather than protection." Marcus met her eyes across scarred table surface. "Not cowardice, self-preservation. Can't fault someone for protecting themselves from pain. But that protection becomes a prison eventually." Victoria set down her glass. "I've been thinking about October, about how close I came to dying alone in a building full of people. The only person who knew to help was someone I'd never acknowledged. That's what isolation creates, vulnerability disguised as strength." The confession felt raw, unfiltered, the kind of truth people usually reserved for therapists or very late nights. Marcus understood he was witnessing something rare, a woman who'd spent 48 years building fortress walls, choosing to tear them down brick by brick. Emma returned breathless from racing games, signed Miss Victoria, should come every Friday. Victoria glanced at Marcus, seeking permission that wasn't his to grant. Emma had made the decision. He nodded. "I'd like that." Emma's grin could have powered cities. She grabbed Victoria's hand, tugged her toward the arcade games. "Come play with me." Victoria stood, let herself be led, glanced back at Marcus with an expression that mixed terror and delight. He watched them disappear around the corner, two people learning each other's languages, building bridges that might become foundations. 6 months passed in acceleration that made October feel like decades ago. March brought security implementation across all 14 Sterling properties. Biometric scanners, upgraded surveillance, panic buttons in every isolated workspace. Employee turnover dropped from 40% to 18%. Incidents requiring emergency response declined by 60%. The Emma Webb Foundation awarded scholarships to 87 families. Media coverage generated donations that doubled the fund's endowment. Marcus reviewed applications, met families, understood viscerally that his daughter's name was becoming synonymous with hope. Emma turned 11 in November, celebrated with pizza and arcade games and Victoria's presence that had become expected rather than novelty. Friday nights had established rhythm, Gino's East deep dish pizza, Emma drawing while adults talked about everything and nothing. May arrived with Chicago, finally remembering warmth existed. Marcus sat in his office reviewing safety protocols for Sterling's Kansas City property, when his phone buzzed, text from Victoria. "Can you come to my office?" He found her at the window looking out at Lake Michigan, turned blue by spring sunshine. She turned when he entered, her expression carrying something he couldn't quite read. The board wants to expand the foundation nationally. 10 states, $25 million commitment over 5 years. Marcus felt the number like physical weight. That's significant. It's happening because you proved the model works. 87 families thriving, children getting therapy they couldn't afford, parents finding support networks. The data is compelling. Victoria crossed to her desk, pulled up documents on her computer. I'm also making a personal change. I'm stepping down as CEO, transitioning to chairman role. Full-time foundation work starting in August. Marcus stared. You're walking away from Sterling. Not walking away. Stepping back. 25 years building hotels taught me how to create value. Now I want to create different kind of value. Foundation work matters more than quarterly earnings. The transformation was complete. The woman who'd walked past him every morning for 10 months had become someone who chose meaning over profit. What about the board? The shareholders already approved. New CEO starts in September. I'll remain chairman, provide oversight, but day-to-day operations go to someone who loves hotels more than I do. Victoria moved closer, her expression shifting into something that made Marcus's pulse accelerate. There's something else, something personal I need to say. Marcus waited, suddenly aware of how close they stood, how much had changed since October. These past 6 months, the Friday dinners, watching you with Emma, learning how you rebuilt your life after loss, I've realized something important. Her voice steadied, taking on the resolve she used in boardrooms. I'm scared of this. Terrified, actually. But being alone is scarier than being vulnerable. Marcus understood what she wasn't quite saying, felt the same fur tangled with possibility. I'm scared too. Haven't let anyone close since Sarah died. Emma comes first always. I wouldn't want it any other way. Victoria's eyes held his. But maybe there's room for both. Room for Emma to have her father and for you to have someone who understands that courage means showing up even when you're terrified. The observation echoed his own thoughts from dozens of Friday nights watching Victoria learn Emma's language. Seeing her transform from distant CEO into someone who drew sea creatures on paper tablecloths. Maybe there is. Victoria stepped closer, close enough that Marcus could see the flecks of gold in her dark eyes. I don't know what this becomes, but I'd like to find out. Marcus thought about Sarah's last words. Promises to let Emma live, to not stop living himself, to understand that love wasn't betrayal of the past, but honoring it by choosing future. So would I. The kiss was tentative, careful, two people learning new language together. Not passionate, healing. The kind of connection that acknowledged past wounds while choosing present possibility. Emma's opinion arrived via text that evening, sent from Victoria's phone because they'd taken her to dinner at a restaurant with actual tablecloths. About time. I've been waiting for you two to figure it out. Marcus showed the message to Victoria, who laughed until tears formed. Your daughter is terrifyingly perceptive. She learned from her mother. Sarah always knew what people needed before they did. The summer passed in rhythm that felt increasingly like family Friday dinners, weekend outings to the aquarium, and Navy Pier. Emma's excitement about starting 6th grade. Victoria moved through their lives with increasing confidence, learned Emma's private sign language, understood the grief that still ambushed Marcus in unexpected moments. August arrived with Victoria's final week as CEO. Sterling Grand held a ceremony honoring her 25 years of service, speeches about visionary leadership and transformative impact. Marcus sat in the audience, watched the woman he'd once known only in passing receive accolades she accepted with grace and barely concealed relief. Her replacement was competent, ambitious someone who genuinely loved the hotel industry's challenges. Victoria attended the transition meetings, provided guidance, then stepped back. Let go of control she'd clung to for decades. September brought new routines. Victoria's foundation office occupied space near Marcus's, their workdays overlapping in ways that felt both professional and personal. They reviewed scholarship applications together, coordinated across expanding territories, built systems that would outlast their involvement. Emma started 6th grade with confidence Marcus hadn't seen before, new friends, marine biology club, independence that no longer terrified him quite so much. She rode the bus alone, now had proven herself responsible enough for freedom he'd once denied out of fear. Friday nights remained sacred. Gino's East Pizza arcade games, Emma drawing increasingly sophisticated sea creatures. But now Victoria's presence carried different weight, the shift from family friend to something more permanent, acknowledged in glances and touches and conversations that extended past Emma's bedtime. October arrived, 1 year since the day that had changed everything. Sterling Grand held a memorial service, not for tragedy but for transformation. Marcus stood at the plaque near the concierge desk, read the engraving, Emma Webb Foundation, in recognition that understanding each other's languages creates bridges that can save lives. Victoria stood beside him, her hand finding his. 1 year. Marcus nodded. Feels longer. Feels like different lifetime. Emma bounded over from the lobby where she'd been explaining foundation impact to a reporter signed, "They want to interview us together. All 3 of us." Victoria glanced at Marcus, seeking permission for something bigger than interview, acknowledgement of what they'd become. He squeezed her hand, nodded. Emma led them toward the cameras, her confidence absolute, a child who'd learned that families could be built from choice as much as biology. The reporter asked about the foundation's growth, about security improvements, about transformation from crisis to opportunity. Emma answered with clarity that made adults seem inarticulate, explained how her father's love had created ripples that touched 87 families and counting. Then the reporter turned to Victoria. "Ms. Sterling, you gave up running a hotel empire to focus on foundation work. Any regrets?" Victoria's hand tightened on Marcus's. "Not one. I spent 25 years building walls, now I'm building bridges. The bridges matter more." The interview concluded. Emma ran off to meet friends. Marcus and Victoria stood in the lobby, exactly where he'd first seen her sign for help, where invisible had become visible, where paying attention had saved lives. "We should get dinner." Victoria's voice carried something playful, lighter than the CEO persona she'd worn for decades. Gino's East. Marcus smiled. "Is there anywhere else?" They walked into autumn evening Chicago, cooling toward winter. The city's rhythm steady and endless. Behind them, Sterling Grand blazed with light, its marble floors reflecting everything past and present, loss and hope. The truth that real strength meant learning each other's languages and showing up even when terrified. Emma waited at the restaurant, already drawing sea creatures that glowed in darkness, already building her own bridges toward futures Marcus could only imagine. She looked up when they entered, signed, "Took you long enough." Victoria laughed, slid into the booth, picked up crayons, began drawing beside Emma. Marcus watched them, his daughter and the woman who'd learned to see him, both drawing creatures that thrived without light. Both teaching him that excellence wasn't just being seen, but seeing others that love. Wasn't just what you said in easy moments, but what you built through every hard one, that bridges constructed from attention and courage could bear weight beyond measurement. Sarah's photo sat on his dresser at home, her smile captured in permanent present tense. But Sarah had made him promise to live, to let Emma live, to understand that honoring the past meant choosing the future. Tonight with Emma drawing bioluminescent fish and Victoria's shoulder pressed against his. Marcus understood he'd kept those promises. The world continued turning. Families built bridges, children learned languages, people paid attention and showed up and chose courage over comfort. And somewhere in Chicago, in a restaurant that served deep dish pizza and provided crayons for dreaming three people who'd learned to see each other, created the kind of family that existed, because they'd chosen it again and again, through every hard moment until hard became home.